station. Well, let's put it simply now. Once you got that result, right? Once you got that result, you could have an incredibly simple system where each party is required to publish a list of all the candidates ranked in order, 1 down to 50, right? 1 down to 50. And it's published before elections, so everybody in the country can look at a political party and say, well, hold on, how multiracial really is it? Do they have only candidates of one ethnicity up at the top? How gender, sensitive are they? Do they have good women, up at the top? How much do they really care about having young people in parliament to represent the youth interests? You can see it. And if it's a matter of huge concern, and perhaps in Fiji because of the relative deprivation of the northern division, right? People in the northern division might say, well, hold on, how much value do they place on people who are going to look after our interests in the northern division? I mean, whatever bothers voters, whatever concerns voters, you could look at the list and see, who would be representing them. Should Party A win 19 seats in Parliament, you just go down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 19, cut-off point, and these are the people in Parliament. Right? Now that's a very simple system you could have. The only problem I have with that one is that essentially all the national votes decide who goes into Parliament, and the local voter has no idea, well, who's going to represent my interest? Who's going to represent Tailevu or Maiviti or Esavas, or Rotuma or whatever? And so this could be a very, very simple system, if political parties were really committed to make sure that they serve the whole country and not just their, narrow interests of their own supporters and all that. But I believe that you should not leave it to chance and to political parties to look after the interests of everybody throughout the country. I believe you have to have local people representing voters. So this is my suggestion that, we go beyond that just simple party list, right? And have local constituencies, right? So let's say we have got 25, people can decide how many they want, whatever I'm just using 25 just arbitrarily, right? And the thing about these local constituencies is that the boundaries can be purely for the convenience of voters and for the parliamentarian to serve them. Because changing the boundaries is not going to make any difference to the eventual outcome in Parliament. The eventual outcome in Parliament has already been decided by the national ballot votes. Changing the boundary is not going to change the result, and you'll see it a bit more clearly in a moment, right? So all this rubbish that used to go on when I was in Parliament, there was a Boundaries Commission, we would all go there and people would jockey this, no, let's move the boundary that way because, we'll get more voters, our supporters, or no, let's move it that way so we'll exclude, some of the other guys. Oh, that kind of rubbish that used to go on, I mean, it was totally, debilitating and killing, right? Because what it meant is that the most, intelligent, representative to the Boundaries Commission could get their own narrow party interests served. In this system, it will not matter. And what you just do is you draw up the boundaries with the help of the Bureau of Stats and the district officers and so on, and you look at the logistics of it and say, well, what area could a parliamentary logically serve well? You don't want the blooming parliamentarian having to travel, 300 kilometers or 400 kilometers to serve some voter right in the corner. Because one of the things that happens every time you have elections is when the candidate goes to a local constituency, the voters will be telling them, oh yeah, so you're coming now, huh? Where were you for the last 3 years, huh? Now you want our vote, now you're coming to us. I tell you, I faced that myself. Sorry, I was too busy in Parliament, I couldn't come to Nambua or Mead Road or whatever. When I went there, this is the kind of, we had a wedding last week, I didn't see you there. We had a funeral 1 month ago, I didn't see you there. Oh, so you've got to let your candidates travel easily to all the weddings and funerals and things, otherwise they won't get votes in this country of ours. So boundaries purely for convenience of the voters and the local parliamentarian. So you've got to ensure a neat geographical boundary and that parliamentarians can travel easily to serve their constituencies, right? And that's the only thing, right? It will not matter at all where the boundaries are set. So once the Boundaries Commission has determined where the boundaries ought to be for convenience, they can go to sleep. They can go to sleep for another 10, 15 years, until people have moved around so much, in the country that you need to maybe have different boundaries. It will become totally apoliticized. And it will be very, very good. Secondly, you won't have to worry about how many voters there are in each constituency. In the last constitution, we were told you've got to have the same number of and all those kinds of things, But in this system, it doesn't matter because once you've got your national ballot papers, then you already decided how many will be in Parliament, and you will not be required to have balance in all these things, because it won't matter, right? You just need it just for convenience. So, you know, you don't have to worry about ethnic composition, right? So you could have one constituency, in my opinion, to serve some of these remote places. Well, you could have one constituency for Rotuma, you could have one for Yasawas, you know, you could have one for Kandavu or Mbanga, you know, Southern Islands, you know, one for Lau, Lomai Beti, for the convenience of the voters, right? Sometimes what used to happen was that Kandavu would be joined together with some part of Viti Levu, you know, or, you know, I mean, Rotuma would be joined to Vanua Levu or something. I mean, you know, how ridiculous, eh? So let's look at the convenience of the parliamentarians and the local voters. So each ballot paper for the local constituency will only have the candidates for that local constituency, right? Only for this. So if there's 10 people standing, there'll be 10 names there. And you could have your party symbols there. And may I suggest some very interesting thing when you do it this way? A voter could vote for a particular party on the national ballot paper, but when it comes to the local constituency, they could very easily vote for a good candidate from another party if they think that that candidate will better serve their interests in Parliament. And it will not make any difference to party representation in Parliament, because that's already been decided by the first ballot paper. Yeah? So you can have independents coming through. Voting can be either by a tick, in which case it will become a first past the post system. I'm opposed to that, because when you've got a fragmented constituency where 8, 9, 10 candidates stand and votes are split, then you might have somebody winning on first past the post with only about 15% of the votes. So I would still be, you know, in favor of having an alternative vote system where people are just simply asked to rank them. It's not a hard thing to do, because, you know, when kids go from primary school to secondary school, all families rank the secondary schools in order of preference. This, my first choice is this, my second is this, my third is this. It's not a hard concept to get across to voters. But if people think this is too much, then just have just a tick and go with first past the post, however bad it may be. But having you know, a win in a local constituency is still not going to change the total representation in Parliament, right? And you'll see this in a moment. So what you have is this, right?